The financial information provided in these lectures is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing specific financial advice. You should contact a financial advisor to obtain specific financial advice. Your lecturer is Dr. Michael Finke. Dr. Finke is a professor of personal financial planning and director of the Retirement Planning and Living Consortium at Texas Tech University, where he leads the doctoral program in financial planning. He holds doctoral degrees in consumer science from The Ohio State University and in finance from the University of Missouri. Dr. Finke has authored award-winning research articles in the fields of retirement income, investment advice, and investor decision-making. He also frequently speaks at industry and academic conferences on advanced financial planning topics. As an expert on personal finance issues, Dr. Finke has appeared in the national press, including the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and Kiplinger's Personal Finance.
In early 2009, while I was teaching an investments class for doctoral students, the stock market suddenly collapsed. It actually happened during the months our students were learning about the basics of investment theory. My own investments lost money, and like many people, I was afraid of how these losses were going to affect my financial future. I was tempted to just sell my stock and get out of the market altogether. But my own students treated me as a case study, reminding me of what I had just taught them in class. They said I should be buying more stocks, doing the exact opposite of what my gut was telling me to do. And they were right. I, of all people, should have known better. Financial markets in the 21st century have given us lots of reasons to get emotional. It can seem hard to make plans when markets are so unpredictable. We act with fear and confusion, and we often feel powerless over our own financial future. How do we prepare ourselves for an uncertain financial future when so much is at stake? Money management requires knowledge. Knowledge of financial products, investment and risk theory, and all important tax rules. But it also requires an understanding of how we, as fallible humans, make mistakes. In this course, I'm going to give you the most important information you'll need to manage your own finances. But I'll also give you insight from the emerging science of personal financial decision-making, so you'll avoid following your emotions down the wrong path. I'm going to let you in on a secret. I buy things on impulse. I rarely remember to save for retirement. I get scared when the market falls. And I never quite find the time to finish things I know I ought to finish. I'm just like you, but that doesn't prevent me from reaching my financial goals. That's because I know how my own brain can get in the way of making good financial decisions. And I know some tricks that help me bypass the parts of my brain that get me in trouble. Managing money means more than being organized. By the end of this course, you'll be able to develop a plan that uses science to help you reach your financial goals. So let's spend some time talking about the brain. Especially when it comes to financial decisions, our brain is in constant struggle. We know what we ought to do, but we often don't do it. That's because we really don't have just one cognitive system. We have two primary brain parts that influence how we respond to money. Once we're aware of these two systems, it becomes much easier to understand why it can be so hard to follow through on our best intentions. Most Americans believe they should save more for retirement, but not enough actually do something about it. When we're planning for the future, we use a little part of our brain right behind our eyes called the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain likes to think it's in control. In fact, it likes thinking it's in control so much that when faced with evidence that it's not in control, it goes to great lengths to justify why we, for example, yelled at our boss or sold all our stock after a market crash. The truth is that the prefrontal cortex we use in conscious decision-making isn't really in control at all. It's been likened to a rider sitting on top of an elephant. The rider can generally guide the elephant around just fine until the elephant decides it really wants to go somewhere else. The elephant part of our brain is called the limbic system. The limbic system is a much older part of the brain and takes up much more real estate in your head. It's responsible for things like emotions, automatic responses to stimuli, and memory. We generally live in the limbic system. Even as you listen to this lecture, it takes a lot of work to keep your prefrontal cortex activated. That's why you might feel exhausted after concentrating for 30 minutes. The limbic system is a lot faster and more efficient, and it's the part that we use the most often in our daily tasks. When we drive to work, we're in limbic mode after the first couple of trips. And when we get up in the morning, we're really in limbic mode. At night, we decide on the best time to get up the next morning using our prefrontal cortex. But when we wake up, we're in limbic mode. That's why we need a snooze button. Because when we planned the night before, we mistakenly thought that we would wake up using our prefrontal cortex. Remember, the rider doesn't want to admit that the elephant is in control. But when we actually woke up, we were using the emotional, intuitive part of our brain. And that part wanted more sleep. There's no rational reason a snooze button should exist. We should wake up in the morning and realize that this is, in fact, the best time to wake up, and we should get out of bed. Does this make us a bad person? No, it makes us human. But we can win the battle if we anticipate how our limbic system is going to react. Once the rational brain understands it can't always rein in our emotional brain, we can do things to take away your emotional brain's power. There's a new alarm clock called a Clocky, invented by a graduate student at MIT who understood how to win the snooze button battle. The Clocky looks just like a normal alarm clock, but it has big rubber wheels on each side. When you press the snooze button once, it does nothing. When you press it a second time, it starts moving off of your bedside table and onto the floor, so you have to chase it around your bedroom to turn it off. After one morning of chasing your clock around the bedroom, the limbic system will probably decide that getting up after a single snooze is a better option. The Clocky is an example of a commitment device. It's a way for the rational brain to keep your emotional brain in check by either limiting its ability to push you away from your goals or by simply taking it out of the decision-making process. Humans have been using commitment devices for a long time to control our limbic impulses. The best illustration comes from Homer's Odyssey. The nymph, Circe, tells Odysseus that he'll be tempted by the song of the sirens, who lure passing sailors to their deaths. Odysseus controls this temptation by instructing his crew to bind him to the mast of the ship. How can tying ourselves to the mast make us better money managers? Successful financial planning means not only knowing what to do, but how to create a plan that will actually work. That means recognizing that we will be tempted by the siren song of impulse spending with credit cards, or never actually getting to the benefits office to put money in our 401k. Especially if we've had these problems in the past, the best plan is one that keeps our emotions in check. Another conflict between the rational brain and the emotional brain is something economists call hyperbolic discounting. Experiments show that we have a tendency to be very impatient when making decisions in the present and much more patient when making decisions about the future. We can see through a brain scan that the prefrontal cortex lights up when you engage in planning for the future. But the limbic system lights up when we're making decisions right now. To illustrate hyperbolic discounting, suppose I gave you the choice of $100 in 1 year or $110 in 2 years. Your rational brain would choose the $110 in 2 years. But if I held a $100 bill in front of you and asked you if you'd rather wait a year to get $110, you'd more than likely take the $100 right now. Our emotional brain hates to wait, even for a small amount of time. Hyperbolic preferences explain a lot of important financial mistakes. A surprising percentage of Americans revolve thousands of dollars on their credit cards at 20% interest rates, while investing in CDs that pay 1%. But many don't pay off their credit cards because they view spending decisions in the present and savings decisions in the future. So for every $5,000 in credit card debt, I'm paying $1,000 in interest. But I could have paid off the credit card with my $5,000 CD that gave me $50 in interest. So my hyperbolic preferences just cost me $950 a year. I recently tried to buy a TV at my local Walmart the weekend after my university mailed out W-2 tax forms to employees. As soon as the university workers have these forms, they can go to a tax preparer and immediately get a refund anticipation check based on their anticipated income tax rebate, even though the tax preparers charge hefty fees for that convenience. There wasn't a TV left in Walmart after tax refunds had been mailed out. But many of these same employees value saving for retirement. They just can't resist the temptation to spend money as soon as they have it in their hands. And it's not just the average employee. Research shows that when CEOs get more cash, they tend to spend it on buying other companies or investing in questionable projects. Even financial planning professors can find themselves with multiple boxes from Amazon after a payroll deposit. We all have a hard time resisting temptation. So what should we do? Get rid of temptation. Let me give an example of a strategy that can limit the temptation of having too much cash. Savings accounts are a great example of a concept known as narrow framing, or simply framing, that financial planners have been using for decades to help their clients meet long-run goals. They know that when a $10,000 paycheck hits a checking account, it's going to get spent. A better strategy would be to deposit the paycheck into a savings account and then have the client transfer money to the checking account when they need it. Savings accounts often require a couple days to transfer assets to a checking account before you can start spending it. Since the transfer happens in the future, you have to use your rational brain. This can reduce annual spending by thousands if you force your rational brain to intervene before your limbic brain gets tempted. Planners also use framing in retirement accounts to help clients deal with the fear of losing money. They use what's called a bucket strategy that separates cash into one bucket and investments into another. They put enough money in the cash bucket to last for, say, 5 years. then when the stock market has a bad month, they can just tell the client not to worry because they wouldn't have touched those investments anyway for 5 years. Linking stock investments with future goals helps you avoid emotion when bad returns happen in the present and your emotional brain wants to do something about it. It's using a trick to fool the elephant, but it works. And why does the emotional side react so badly to losses in the stock market? Our emotions have a difficult time dealing with a loss. The first time I invested in a stock, I checked my balance every day, sometimes every 15 minutes. One day I'd lost $200 between breakfast and lunch. I thought about all the things I could have bought with $200. I could have bought 400 White Castle hamburgers, 5 tanks of gas, some new clothes. We all do this. Nothing hurts more than a loss. But why do we dwell on losses? Our best guess is that loss aversion gave our ancestors a better chance of survival. If you freak out when you lose some of your Staffordshire winter food, then you're more likely to make it to the next harvest. But that emotional response isn't that useful in modern financial markets. In fact, it is the reason why many of us underperform the stock market, buy the wrong insurance, and avoid taking sensible risks. In the 2008-2009 stock market crash, which was brutal for investors, many financial advisors fielded dozens of calls from clients who wanted to stop the emotional pain and pull out of the market. Rationally, we know that stock prices tend to go through cycles and that the worst time to sell is after prices have fallen. But the rational part of our own brain can get overruled by the much more powerful emotional part. Investors pulled record amounts of money out of stock funds in early 2009 when the market hit rock bottom. An investor who freaked out and sold $100 in stock in early March 2009 and invested it in a money market account would have earned a couple dollars by the summer of 2013. The patient investor saw their stock investment climb to more than double to $250. Loss aversion is fascinating because we seem to give a lot more weight to small losses than to large ones. This isn't rational because small losses are a normal part of taking risk, and we get rewarded for accepting that risk. People will buy an expensive insurance plan to protect themselves against the loss of a $500 iPad, but they won't raise their liability limits on a car insurance plan to protect themselves against a much larger loss. We also tend to focus on a reference point. For example, a gambler who goes to a casino with $1,000 and loses $500 will often take bigger and bigger risks to get back to his starting point of $1,000. If you start a new investing plan after watching these lectures, you'll tend to focus on the original amount you invest and compare your results to this reference point. Some investment advisors try to shift their client's reference point by providing annual statements, which are less likely to show a loss from fluctuating markets instead of quarterly statements. So loss aversion means we focus too much on an arbitrary reference point. We care too much about small losses and not enough about large ones. And we also tend to not care enough about our gains. When I first invested in stocks, the loss of $200 caused me a lot more stress than the eventual gain of $200 made me happy after the markets had recovered. This happiness that I get from a gain is related to a concept known as risk tolerance. If you're risk tolerant, or if your experience and knowledge allow you to control your emotional impulses, then you'll be willing to lose money in order to make more on average over time. You'll begin to accept the losses as just an inevitable part of reaching your long-run financial goals. In 1995, behavioral economists Shlomo Benartzi and Richard Thaler wrote a paper that sought to explain the historically high returns on investments in stocks compared to those on investments in bonds. They attributed the difference to both of the psychological effects I've discussed so far, focusing too much on the short run and being loss averse. Remember that experiments show that the unhappiness from a loss is greater than the pleasure we get from an equal size gain. Stock values tend to fluctuate more than bond values. If the average stock investor checked their balance once a year, they'd see a loss about 25% of the time. And each time they saw a loss, they'd feel some pain and regret. Most people would prefer investing in bonds since they wouldn't have to experience this pain and regret from a loss. That means a stock investor would want to get a higher return on average, also known as a risk premium, to compensate them for these losses. Benartzi and Thaler's estimates completely explained why stocks have performed so well over the last 20th century, because people are willing to accept a lower return on bonds since most of the time they don't experience a loss. In other words, if you can control your myopic and loss-averse tendencies, you can achieve a long-run bonus by accepting investment risk. In addition to having difficulty controlling emotions like loss aversion, the prefrontal cortex is also slow and gets tired easily when we have to make too many decisions. A common sales tactic is to overwhelm a customer with complicated information. When we shop for a car, by the time we sign on the dotted line, we've often been inundated with information to soften us up for the final decision. When we're faced with information overload, we just want to make a decision and go home because our emotions have overwhelmed our weaker rational brain. In a study published in 1999, subjects were asked to memorize either 2-digit numbers or 7-digit numbers. It takes less effort to remember 2 digits. When the subjects were asked whether they'd like a snack of a bowl of fruit salad or a slice of chocolate cake, the ones whose rational brain was exhausted from remembering 7 digits went for the chocolate cake significantly more often than the ones who only had to remember 2-digit numbers. Brain fatigue is a real problem, and it can lead to very bad decisions when we have to make an offer on a house, choose a mortgage, buy a car, or even agree to buy an investment product from a salesman. The solution? Never make a big, important financial decision without sleeping on it. This is one piece of conventional wisdom that can be explained by neuroeconomics. Another limitation of our rational brain is a tendency to focus on more easily available information. I teach in Lubbock, Texas. A devastating 2013 tornado in nearby Moore, Oklahoma, caused an immediate spike in demand for tornado shelters. We also tend to worry more about flying if there's been a recent crash. But we're ignoring the fundamental probabilities that each of these events will occur when we overweight the recent events. Between 1995 and 1999, stocks rose in value by between 20 and 34% each year. 1999 saw an all-time record flow of investor dollars into stock mutual funds. This period of record returns left many investors feeling left out if they weren't investing in stocks. Other investors thought this new era of high stock returns was going to make them into multi-millionaires in no time. A top-selling book published in 1999 when the Dow had just passed 10,000 was called Dow 36,000, which of course led another author to publish a book titled Dow 40,000. Why did people believe that the good times were going to last forever? The tendency to focus too much on recent events affects our general sentiment about the economy. It's well known that consumer sentiment ebbs and flows with business cycles. When there's an economic expansion, like the one in the late 1990s, people tend to be very optimistic about the future. When there's a recession, like the one in 2002 or 2008, we tend to be very pessimistic. When we're pessimistic, we start losing our love for risky assets like stocks. When we're optimistic, we can't buy enough stocks. This cyclical optimism and pessimism also impacts the expected return on stocks. When sentiment is low and stock prices fall, this can be an excellent time to rebalance your portfolio by selling bonds and buying more stocks, the opposite of what our emotions would tell us to do. When sentiment is high and stock prices rise, this can be a good opportunity to sell stocks and rebalance our portfolio into bonds. But this is also very difficult. It means that our rational brain has to override our emotional brain. Veteran investors can do this by reminding themselves of previous market recoveries. Or you can choose investments that automatically rebalance and avoid the elephant entirely. The benefit of automatic tools has been one of the most surprising and powerful findings from academic studies over the last decade. Especially when it comes to saving for retirement, the best strategy is also to keep the elephant out of the process. This effect is so powerful that it has completely transformed how we think about retirement policy. Humans tend to follow the path of least resistance, and we often overestimate our future willingness to change our bad habits. Recognizing that we're probably going to be just as lazy tomorrow as we are today can help us select strategies that are more likely to work. I often take on projects that I think I'm going to finish because my rational brain believes the future version of myself is going to be more industrious than I am today. But there are ways to make sure I complete these tasks by using commitment devices. I find that I'm most likely to complete projects if the consequences of not completing them are significant. For example, if I commit myself to give a speech in front of a large group of people, the fear of embarrassment gives me motivation to complete the task. Other techniques include communicating regularly with others to provide progress reports. This explains the success of regular Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with a sponsor or joining an online community to lose weight or to pay off debt. This also explains why working with a financial advisor or counselor can be more effective. If you're accountable for a lack of progress, you're more likely to actually do something. Most advisors know that the single best way to get a client to save more for retirement is to have them bring in a retirement form from their personnel office, fill it out during the meeting, and then mail it back to their employer. Once an employee starts saving more for retirement, they tend to never notice the drop in their paycheck. Research shows that retirement savings are incredibly sticky. Once you choose a percentage or a monthly savings amount, almost all employees stay at that amount forever. So the single most important retirement savings trick is to visit the benefits office and get it started. After that, you won't think about it, and the elephant won't have a chance to remind you of all the fun things you could have bought with that money in the present. This is one of the reasons I like investment in retirement plans that employees don't have to mess with. The easiest one is what's known as a target date retirement fund. The government has even encouraged the use of these automatic investments and now requires employees to opt out of retirement savings rather than relying on them to opt in. This policy illustrates the power of defaults. When the government sets one choice as the default and requires people to opt out if they prefer another choice, then we know that the path of least resistance will mean that most will live with those defaults. Setting ourselves on a track of behavior right now means that we will most likely continue that behavior in the future. Habits are extremely difficult to change, and carefully developing new habits can have a powerful impact on long-run financial success. As an academic, I see a lot of evidence that knowledge doesn't always equal success. In our college, there are a lot of overweight nutrition professors and a surprising number of professors in marriage and family therapy that have been divorced. More important than knowledge is the ability to use that knowledge to change habits and take steps to avoid forcing our rider to steer the elephant. And don't think that academics are any less overconfident in their ability to control their elephant. They're probably worse. Overconfidence is another important behavioral barrier to sound financial decision-making. Men in particular seem to believe that they can do better than the market. They tend to brag about how much money they earned in the clever investments that they made. Unfortunately for us, researchers with access to our investment accounts found something different. Overconfident men tend to trade too often, and this frequent trading leads to investment performance that's lower than that of investment accounts that are owned by women. It doesn't matter whether we're a day trader or a mutual fund manager. Men tend to trade more frequently and underperform the market. I have my own investment account where I've proven my own remarkable inability to outperform the market. If you're a man, one surefire way to improve your investing performance is to accept a dose of humility and quit trying to beat the market, because you probably won't. And while we're at it, suck it up and admit it when you've invested in a losing stock. Another important finding from investment account research is that we all have a tendency to sell our winning stocks and keep our losing stocks. This is also related to loss aversion. It would be painful to lock in a loss by selling a stock that's fallen in value, but it makes us feel good to lock in the gains from a winning stock. Investors will predictably sell their winners and keep their losers. The problem is that stock prices tend to exhibit short-run momentum. Today's winners are probably going to also be winners tomorrow. And today's losers are probably going to keep underperforming tomorrow. Investors lose money by selling the wrong stocks. But that means having a fight with the elephant, just like I did in early 2009 when I fought my emotions and invested more after a market crash. Throughout this course, I'm going to make sure you have the basic knowledge we all need to reach our financial goals. Each topic will use science to predict which tools and strategies are most likely to be successful, so you can keep your elephant from misbehaving. In our next lecture, I'll introduce a framework that will allow you to map out these goals over the course of your life.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Financial Hacks with Finance Cape, your finance concierge. My name is Travis Jennings, and today I wanted to talk for a little bit about the habits that we have in our life. Habitually, let's think about what's going on. We have a cell phone that's consistently marketing to us all day long, every day. Television, you turn it on, there's commercials every couple of minutes. You drive down the road, there's billboards everywhere. Guys, the reality of the situation is there's this huge game going on where corporations want to extract your money. And in order to break that, you have to have an incredibly strong willpower or habit set. So why don't you take a moment and just talk briefly about habits. Now, if your habit is to, every time you have a little bit of extra money, stick it on your credit card, I want you to think about that. You're adding extra money to the place where you lean on most frequently. That's not the most effective way to pay down your debts. You just probably have never learned another way. There are educators out there that teach this concept. We teach this concept. We go one step further and provide a system through automation. Think about the 401k. What happens? You learn about it, you research it, you make a decision, you automate it, and it goes. This is the way we have to reprogram our habits, our thoughts. This is the only way to break the chains of debt and create wealth. If you guys want to learn more about this, we're writing a white paper on it, and then of course you can reach out to us on social media or shoot us an email or a phone call. Anything we can do. We want to help you improve your habits so that you can start moving forward with your life. Start reaching that financial freedom and then eventually financial abundance. I appreciate you spending some time with us. Please like us on social media, sign up for the newsletter so that these hacks can show up in your inbox once a week. Thank you very much. If I could be of service, please let me know. Take care. Hello and welcome. My name is Travis Jennings with Finance Cape, your finance concierge. I wanted to take a minute and provide another financial hack for you, right? As your concierge, I want to make sure you have access to every solution out there that'll put more dollars in your pocket. So with this one, we're going to talk stock market. Okay, so this is on the Finance Cape side, specific to your finances. Those of you that are in the stock market, you need to understand a couple of things, and this is obviously a topic for a much bigger conversation, but consolidating it down, giving you the best information possible. If you're in the stock market, there's a couple different strategies. One is passive. It means you ride the wave of the market. Warren Buffett is a huge proponent of this. He says you buy something with a dividend, let it ride. Obviously, there's more rules to it, but ultimately it's passive. You ride the wave. There are also managers out there that are tactical in nature. What that means is they're doing their best for when the market falls to pull you out. Kind of the example I like to use, my oldest son is 15, he's turning 16 in March. Right today, the day of this recording, we're in the middle of February, I am 1 month away from him driving a car. Me being scared to death that he's going to pass away. But the reason I share this story is because I think it's incredibly important. If he's out on the road, we have lines in the road, right? And those lines are supposed to keep us there, keep us away from problems. Now, there are investment strategies and technologies out there that will help you keep your investment between the lines. Is this foolproof? Of course not. But you can see where it might benefit you. Let's say that you own Apple and you say, I like Apple and I want to ride Apple, but if it ever falls 10%, I want to be notified. There are technologies out there that will literally, you put in your investment allocations, and then if each one of those investments ever dip, you define it. If you say 10%, it's 10%. If you say 5, it's 5. You define it. And if that investment from any of its ever peaks falls 10%, you will have an email show up in your inbox in the morning. So what do you do with that information? Hey, I got an email. Looks like Apple fell 10%. Let me call my advisor and make sure that they have a strategy or solution to make sure that that doesn't fall anymore. There are free technologies online. If you guys would like some recommendations, shoot us a message on social media. We'll share a couple of them with you. We don't have anything to gain by that. Just want to make sure that if you want active management, if you want maybe some technological, can't really say advantages, but if you want to have some of the benefits that come with technology and you just don't really know, let us show you. Okay, let us be that guy. Let us be that concierge. If you have money in the market, it is at risk. I'm not saying that this is the one-size-fits-all silver bullet. By all means, it helps to know when something falls. It's a fantastic conversation starter for your current advisor or broker. Hey, things are down. What are we doing? Tell you what, you make that call a couple times, they start keeping an eye on it. So, let us know. Reach out on social media, shoot us an email, give us a call. We'll give you those websites so that you can sign up for the free services and take advantage of them in your own life. One of the next financial hacks we're going to cover is specifically your 401k and how to integrate technology into that to make sure that you're making the most use of your 401k. Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll see you around.